2020 was a shit show. I don't think that's a controversial statement to make. Inequality, intolerance, and injustice, all problems that have been getting worse in recent years, and all converging with the advent of a fucking plague. Watching the world burn, it feels trivial to complain about being stuck inside for a year. Wait, it's been a year. It's been over a year already? Wait, it's May? Well, as of writing and recording this, it's May. What? Oh, God. But it's no surprise that we all feel helpless and alone right now. The pandemic is still wreaking havoc now in 2021, and though things may not be as dire as they have been, it still feels like we're limping towards the finish line. It's enough to drive anyone mad. Now more than ever, people need an escape from it all to distract them from the fact that the world is spinning out of control and the wheel is out of our hands. Or anyone's hands. Is anyone driving the bus? And right on cue, in drops Folklore, Taylor Swift's 8th studio album. Now, you're probably thinking, Taylor Swift? As in, pop star who writes about breakups Taylor Swift? What's she gonna do? Make me cry over how much I love my non-existent lover while I poison my ex's champagne with mineral oil? To which I say, yeah, probably. But Folklore is actually a massive departure from her usual style. Swift's work is far more musically diverse than most give it credit for, especially given she's one of the rare cases of an artist who actually writes her own songs, albeit with the help of one or two co-writers for most tracks. But that's for another time. Folklore itself is unique in the fact that it isn't a pop album at all. Instead of relying on earworm hooks and catchy choruses, Folklore takes inspiration from, as the name suggests, indie folk music with an emphasis on dark, reflective lyrics. Rather than make you want to dance, Folklore looks you in the eye, tells you there's no such thing as love and life is shit, and then leaves you to lie awake staring at the ceiling and crying about how pointless everything is until 3 a.m. No? Just me? Okay then.
There is something about the complete and total uncertainty about life that causes endless anxiety, but there's another part that causes sort of a release of the pressures that you used to feel. Because if we're going to have to recalibrate everything, we should start with what we love the most. And I think that's what we were sort of unconsciously doing with this. And I was so glad that we did, because it turned out that everyone needed a good cry, as well as us.
Lyrical storytelling has always been a strength of Swift from her early days, and Folklore is proof of how much she's excelled in her craft. From stories of wild widows diving into champagne-filled pools, to haunting someone who betrayed you and had the gall to turn up to your funeral, to even describing the nightmare doctors and nurses have been living through over the past year trying to save as many lives as they can, the stories of Folklore are raw, honest, and soulful. The inclusion of Jack Antonoff and Aaron Dessner as co-producers definitely helped as well. Jack is a music producer and songwriter, and he's been with Taylor ever since 1989, helping produce classics such as Out of the Woods, Look What You Made Me Do, Getaway Car, Cruel Summer, and many more bops. Aaron is also a producer, with this being the first album he's worked with Taylor on, and from my understanding, Aaron actually creates the instrumental tracks for the song he's part of, or some of them, and then Taylor writes the lyrics based on what she hears. I'm not sure which songs were written to track, but I do find that process interesting of how a song comes together no matter where you start. When Taylor reached out, I had this large folder of ideas that were pretty well on their way. She was very clear that she didn't want me to edit any of my ideas. She wanted to hear everything that was interesting to me at the moment, including really odd experimental noise. So I made a folder of stuff, including some pretty out there sketches. A few hours later, she sent Cardigan, fully written, in a voice memo. That's when I realized that this was unusual. Just the focus and clarity of her ideas. It was pretty astonishing. Over the next couple months, this would just happen. All of a sudden, I'd get a voice memo, and then another. Eventually, it was so inspiring that I wrote more ideas that were specifically in response to what she was writing. I know this album has definitely helped me through some tough times over the last few months. I actually wasn't able to listen to any of Taylor's music for a long time following a particularly painful breakup, and thankfully my friend Maxwell has helped reintroduce me to Taylor's music and even get me into Folklore. Though it was initially shadow dropped in July of 2020, I didn't listen to the full thing until late November. Weirdly, right before Evermore dropped. If that is not a sign of some invisible string, I don't know what is. But I immediately fell in love with the album. Instantly, these stories of lost love, grief, betrayal, and hope in the midst of despair resonated with me. I found myself taken to another world, simultaneously lost in lush pastures stretching towards infinity, and rocky cliffsides screaming into the deafening waves crashing far below. I was made to confront every disappointment, every heartbreak, and every failure, and reflect on the steps that had brought me there. And I was left to wonder how I could use the pains and missteps along my journey to do better, for myself and for others. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I describe folklore as a spiritual experience. I listen to this album almost every day, keeping it on loop on Spotify and obsessing over the gorgeous lyric videos. The small, minimalist text against the stock footage of rolling tides and gathering storm clouds? Chef's kiss, every single one. This album has done so much for me, and I would imagine it's done a lot for others. So today, I want to talk about why. And if you haven't listened to folklore because you're convinced Taylor Swift isn't your style, maybe you'll give me a chance to make my case for her. I mean, she doesn't need me to, but I'm doing this because I love her music, so. And I know it's very different from my usual content, but I would appreciate it if you stuck through this. If you find yourself enjoying this video all the way to the end, I highly recommend the Long Pond sessions over on Disney+, so you get to hear the insight from the creators themselves and their masterpiece firsthand. I'll also be using piano covers of the folklore songs by Min's Piano when discussing each track. They're beautiful, highly suggest y'all go listen to them. Oh, it's so good. In any case, we will be exploring each track and talking about each story in depth. Now, I want to preface this by saying I am in no way a musical expert. My field of expertise is in writing and storytelling, and though I'm still an aspiring author, for now, and I'm still learning my craft, I want to share why exactly I appreciate the masterful storytelling of folklore, primarily through its lyrics. I will occasionally try to bring up some of the more obvious bits of the production that add to some of the track's atmospheres, but for the most part, I'm gonna be trying to stay in my lane. Now, before we dive in, let's set the stage and talk about what folk music is. By taking a look at its roots, we'll be able to understand how folklore was able to exemplify the genre and use that to break into our hearts and leave us hunched over crying in pain. Do you remember how in school they taught us about oral storytelling? How back in ye olden days, before we could ask Google how to file our taxes or why we're even here, people would pass down stories from one generation to the next by word of mouth. Which, like, how in the fuck did people memorize something like the Iliad from beginning to end, when I can't even remember what I ate for breakfast last Tuesday? That is essentially how folk music operates. There's no concrete definition or set of criteria that objectively makes something a folk song. Rather, it's all about stories told through music within a community, often passed down from one person to the next. Every culture has its own folk music precisely because it is the music of the people. That's what the word folk literally means. Thank you, German. Better people than me have tried to say, I'm no scholar, I'm no authority. All I can say is some people think folk music has to be 300 years old, good and moldy, like a cheese. Other people say it's anything that folks sing. I usually think it's a quality that some songs have got more of, and other songs have less of. That guy in particular sang a pretty underrated bop you probably haven't heard of. You know, just a little Skip to My Lou. Yeah, that guy. I say sang rather than wrote because Skip to My Lou actually goes all the way back to a game Honest Abe liked to play about stealing your friend's girlfriend. Okay. Most folk songs are like that, with roots in games or stories within a community that often have unknown creators, or have been done over so many times that it doesn't even really matter who made it in the first place. It's less about owning that story, and more about putting your own spin on it. Folk songs are deceptively simple, usually about my land being your land, or your boyfriend leaving you with your unborn child before you jump off a bridge.
And here is where I'll end it, on the bridge.
Someone check on Dolly Parton. Is she okay? I'll link some videos in the cards and description that you can check out to learn more about folk music, but from what I have learned, its philosophy is one folklore the album fully embraces. Up until this point, Swift's songs for the most part are autobiographical, stories about or inspired primarily by events from her real life. But with folklore, she decided to remove that limitation and create entirely fictional stories about the people living in the woods of her mind, with some light sprinkling of her own experiences here and there for some seasoning. She has, in fact, done the thing that drives most authors to writer's tears, but instead of wailing about it like a banshee, she sang like a goddamn angel. And also, instead of a book, she made an album. Although I'm pretty sure she could write a book if she wanted. I would read the shit out of that book. She tells stories about someone having... Sir, I am talking about the great Taylor Swift. Fuck you and your engine. I don't know if anyone actually... I don't know if the mic picked that up, but I find that rude. How am I supposed to convey the illusion that I'm out in the wilderness recording this in complete unnatural silence when your engine is loud as fuck? She tells stories about someone having an affair who demands to be respected and loved even while they're kept a secret by their lover. Stories about the magic of childhood and how it dwindles with age. And stories about how boys are stupid and men, quite frankly, ain't shit.
I'm only 17, I don't know anything, but I know I miss you.
Oh my god, just shut up, James. Just shut up. Funnily enough, Taylor even went as far as to craft a love triangle across 3 tracks of the album: Cardigan, August, and Betty. We'll get into that story of teenage cheating and melodrama shortly, but suffice to say, Taylor Swift is the only person allowed to do a love triangle now. I don't make the rules, I just enforce them. Unless it's like a gay love triangle, in which case, okay, I'll allow it. Folklore also indulges in cottagecore aesthetic. Given most of us have been trapped indoors and have to wear masks and socially distance ourselves whenever we venture outside, we can't exactly enjoy the outdoors the way that we could pre-COVID. And I think that's made a lot of us realize how much we took for granted when we could quite literally go anywhere we wanted. Taylor describes this need to escape into nature, not only to escape from the chaos that the pandemic has brought, but also to escape all the drama and invasion of privacy that her fame has brought her. As such, it makes perfect sense that folklore relies so heavily on imagery like trees, flowers, pastures, lakes, and so on. In a time when we can't go camping or even take a walk without our masks, we can at least let folklore help us imagine ourselves out in nature, basking in the sweeping vistas and showing us the wisteria. And so the stories that she's created have taken on a new life in all of us, and the experiences we bring to the album when we listen further paint her interpretations. It even keeps up the relaxing cottagecore vibe with the fact that the album's title, along with all of the track titles, are all lowercase. It's just an extra touch that I really appreciate aesthetically. Now with all that set up, it's time to delve into each song, beginning with... Have you ever had that moment where everything in life is going really well, and then inexplicably, your mind takes you back a few years to that person that you used to be in love with? Maybe it was an ex or a crush, or maybe it's not even romantic, but it's someone who used to be a big part of your life. You start wondering how they're doing, and before you know it, you've made a whole ass PowerPoint presentation catching them up on how your life has gone. Just figuratively, I mean. That is the one. It sets up themes of reflection, loss, and eventual acceptance that the rest of the album will continue to explore in depth. And as the opener, it keeps things simple. Everyone has that one person from their past where the feelings were strong, but things just didn't work out for whatever reason. You often wonder what life would be like had you stayed together, or maybe had you gotten the chance to have a relationship at all. You wonder what life is like for them now. You're not exactly sad about how things went down. It's more, hey, that could have been a fun time, but oh well. It doesn't even have to apply to a relationship. It could be any opportunity that you either weren't able to take advantage of, that was just out of reach, or that just came at the wrong time. You can really get stuck in your own head because of all the what ifs. but I do think it's important to recognize this as an experience most of us go through. And it's clear from the singer's perspective that while they're looking back, their present is still going well. I'm doing good, I'm on some new shit. Been saying yes instead of no. These lyrics give the vibe that this person is happy where they're at in life. For the most part, they're at peace with the way things have worked themselves out. Just because an opportunity was lost or something didn't work out, doesn't mean life came crashing down and just ended and became miserable. It just means life went on a bit differently than planned. Some other lines I really enjoy are in the chorus. Roaring 20s, tossing pennies in the pool. Taylor's imagery is always vivid and fits the vibe perfectly. This is a reference to the Roaring 20s, a time of economic wealth, luxuriance, and indulgence in American culture, ending with the start of the Great Depression where the facade collapsed in on itself. It parallels this wonderful time in the past that eventually crumbled into the rift that we're singing across now. And since folklore also is steeped in reflection, it makes sense that several of the songs refer to older time periods, as it gives the album this timeless quality where we can see how these kinds of human emotions repeat across the ages, because these feelings are absolutely universal. Even the use of the penny, like how we toss coins into fountains and are told to make a wish, fits this simple wish to go back and make sure things turn out the way that you hoped they would have. And personally, I also love the way Taylor uses colors in her imagery. I like to assign specific colors to the mood of each song. The One has always felt like a copper song to me, mostly because of the pennies, though it could also be that she always uses gold to describe true final love, whereas copper is less valuable but still charming to the eye in the right light. That's probably just me reaching, but it's my video, so. Out of all the songs, The One makes me feel the most comfy, weirdly enough. I know for most people that's Cardigan. I don't know what to tell you. The entire album feels that way for me given the cottagecore vibes, but The One specifically makes me feel like I'm under a blanket with a cup of cocoa beside a fireplace, maybe in that little log cabin from the Cardigan music video while it's raining outside. And I'm just looking back fondly on my memories, as shitty as my memory may be. When I want to feel at home, The One is usually my first choice. I don't know if that's something about the song itself, or because it was the first song from folklore I had heard given, well, it's track 1, but either way, The One deserves more love than it gets. Also, can we just appreciate that Taylor knows exactly how to open up and close her albums every single time? And the fact that track 1 is literally called The One, and it uses the numerical 1 instead of spelling it out? Superior aesthetics. When creating folklore, Taylor adamantly decided to focus on crafting stories that weren't her own. You can see how her own experiences have influenced these songs, namely because when you're a writer or any kind of creator, your experiences will always inform the stories you tell in some way, consciously or subconsciously. That's just what humans do. We share our stories, and when we hear someone else's story, we try to relate them to our own. But Cardigan is a bit special. Technically, it was not the lead single of the album, because the album had no singles, but in effect, it was thanks to the stunning music video. And it's also the first in a trilogy of songs dedicated to a fictional love triangle. The basic story is that James and Betty were together, but then James went and cheated on Betty with a nameless girl we call August, or maybe Augusta or Augustine according to Taylor. We'll go with Augustine to differentiate between the song and the character. Each song is from a different perspective. August is of course for Augustine, Betty is for James singing to Betty, and Cardigan is for Betty. I love the fact that Taylor was able to create a compelling little story about love, cheating, and all the drama that comes with both of these things, especially given she goes in depth with each person's feelings to create 3 completely different but equally compelling songs. They all feel like people who could exist in the real world rather than one-dimensional caricatures. So Cardigan, according to that narrative, is from Betty's perspective when she's an adult. She is looking back on the hardships of her love with James when he cheated on her. But now, he's gotten his shit together, and ultimately he was The one.
God damn it, Barb!
No, I'm not sorry. However, there's a lot of discourse that Cardigan can also apply to Taylor's relationship with her fans, which, as a creator and writer myself, really resonates with me personally. But rather than talk about Taylor's life specifically, I want to explore the song more through the lens of any artist, someone who creates a piece of art from their soul to share with the world, and all the ways that affects them and the people who consume their work. When you're creative, you normally don't get into whatever craft you specialize in because you want to make it big or rake in the dough. Usually it's more about enjoying the art of telling a story through whatever medium you find helps you articulate what you have to say best. And the challenge as you grow up is to not lose that spark as you try to survive in the real world, especially as an adult. Hello, 7 foreshadowing! A world where, for most creatives, the goal is to be able to live off of your work, only to discover that monetizing what you love brings a host of problems that can corrupt that innocence and destroy your love for the work that you do. There's already the fact that when you create a piece of art, it's terrifying to think of how the world may scrutinize it, and by proxy, how it may scrutinize you. Especially nowadays, in the era of social media, we feel personally connected to creators through parasocial relationships, one-sided dynamics where we feel we know the creator firsthand, but the creator doesn't even know we exist. There are a number of videos about this subject, which I will link in the description, namely ones done by PhilosophyTube and Lindsay Ellis. But it's part of the gig of being a creator in today's world, especially on YouTube. Not only is your work important, but also you as a person. You are, in fact, your own brand, expected to be available to the masses at all times and act perfectly beneath a microscope. Author-tuber Alexa Dunn talks about this in a video about author as brand. She posits that, at least in the traditional publishing world, the age of the hermit author, and by extension the hermit creator, the creator who simply puts out their work to the world, lets the creation speak for itself, and then returns to their quiet, private life, that's over. Now you're expected to have your face all over social media, you're meant to be accessible, you yourself are your own brand. And your books, your creations, anything you make is secondary to that. I mean, I even knew this before I made my YouTube channel, because the whole reason I created it was because I was working on a book and I had a blog at the time that didn't get much traction, and I knew that I would need some kind of other platform to extend my reach and make people care, because who's gonna buy the book if no one cares who the author is, right? And I'm happy I made my YouTube channel. It's one of the best decisions that I've ever made. It's helped me grow as a person, it's helped me meet so many wonderful people, but it has also come with a lot of hardships, and in a lot of ways, it changed how I viewed myself and others, and how I acted, usually not for the better. I mention all of this because to live that way is exhausting. It's dehumanizing, expected to come across to audiences as authentic at all times, while also presenting yourself in an appealing way, and not once stepping out of line of your audience's expectations. It can be isolating, being commodified, when maybe all you wanted to do was to create something others could enjoy, while still having your own private life away from prying eyes. That's certainly something Taylor experienced in the fallout following her 1989 era leading into Reputation, where she basically went off and then ran away to the lakes to enjoy her privacy and own her music. And that's not even touching on all the ways that being a public figure makes you very vulnerable to public skepticism and canceling if you do one thing wrong. Again, referencing ContraPoint's canceling video and Lindsay's video Mask Off. A lot of the time when you talk about Taylor's music, the discussion will veer into her experiences in personal life and the media's representations of her for good or for ill. And in a way, it's frustrating that the work itself is often overlooked or oversimplified, and people's judgment as to whether it's good falls on whether they even like Taylor as a person, when they don't even know her personally. When I got into Taylor's music, especially folklore, I never realized just how intricate her storytelling was. Because of my own perceptions of her, mostly given to me by cultural osmosis, I just always assumed it was very shallow music about breakups, boys, money, all that stuff. but it could not have been further from the truth. This is also likely due to her being a woman, as people tend to be more critical of women who speak about their experiences so freely, especially when it comes to their relationships. But since I can't speak much to that as an NB who was assigned male at birth, I will leave that to someone who's more qualified. Again, video in the description. Wow, I'm just recommending all sorts of videos today. Cardigan personalizes this relationship between creator and audience. How it feels like the creator knows each member of the audience intimately and is able to vocalize their feelings in a way that should be impossible. How the audience, if they feel they know the creator well enough, could show their love and adoration through monetary support or just outward excitement. Or fan works. Oh god, I love Taylor Swift covers. Specifically the lines, "You drew stars around my scars, but now I'm bleeding." How we can try to piece together a creator's struggles to say that we know them. How a creator can make wonderful art, worthy of being hung in the night sky from their traumas and hardships. But eventually, they can bring a new assortment of traumas that are even harder to address. I knew you'd haunt all of my what-ifs. I knew I'd curse you for the longest time. To quote Long Story Short, the knife cuts both ways. It's a two-way street where not only can creator and audience help each other process their own feelings, but also hurt each other. For the creator, it's the commodification of themselves, their work, and their experiences, opening them up to public discourse, scrutiny, and ridicule. And for the audience, it's work that can affect them in any number of ways, possibly even bringing them back to dark moments depending on the work's material. But ultimately, while Cardigan may talk about all these difficulties honestly and how they can hurt, and it gets very dark at times, it is still overall a net positive. If the bond between creator and audience is strong enough, if the work is able to stand on its own, and if proper boundaries are enforced, that dynamic doesn't have to be destructive. It can be like how most of us creatives wished it was when we were younger, for our personal fulfillment, for the enjoyment of others, and nothing more. Funnily enough, Taylor actually references her older eras in the first few lyrics. The vintage tee, brand new phone, and high heels apply to the vintage aesthetic of 1989, the height of her fame. The sequin smile and black lipstick, meanwhile, refer to the darker vibe of Reputation, and sensual politics refer to lovers' themes of romance, intimacy, and being unafraid to speak on political issues for fear of backlash. All rise for the national anthem, Miss Americana and the Heartbreak Prince. And on a tangential note, can we talk about the Cardigan music video though? The aesthetics? Taylor climbing into a piano filled with gold because music brings her to another world. All the ways it can take you to a beautiful, lush, peaceful realm filled with nature, or leave you stranded, barely treading water in the midst of a dark, stormy sea, and all while following COVID guidelines to ensure everyone's safety. We love to see it. Rebecca Harkness was a fucking icon. A philanthropist, ballet enthusiast, 4-time divorcee, at one point scoring a guy who was 20 years younger, goddamn girl, and literally wrote in her old scrapbook that she set out to do something bad. She had literal I did something bad energy. I wanted to do some research on her for this video, given the song takes inspiration from her life. Her story is covered in Blue Blood by Craig Unger, I hope I'm saying that right, which goes for $700 for a hardcover? Fucking excuse me? Oh good god, only literal blue bloods could afford that. Rebecca Harkness is turning over in her Dolly designer urn. Her ghost will not stand for this, so no. Apparently it's out of print, so whoever Craig's publisher is, get to it and give us the goods. Also, Unger, thank you for your service. Everyone say thank you to Craig. It's not his fault. But The Last Great American Dynasty covers Rebecca's story quite well. It puts you there on the ground with her as a protagonist, marrying into wealth and extravagance, only to give up on the only to belch at parties. Yes. Only to give up on the posturing of upper-class life and go, fuck it, I'm gonna have some fun. Truly, nothing is more frightening to stuffy rich people than a woman who dares to have a good time. Lacing punch bowls at parties with mineral oil, it sounds weird, I know, but apparently it causes constipation, so F in the chat for the rich people's bowels. Having strippers dancing on tables, and filling an entire pool with, you guessed it, Dom Perignon. But apparently she did not steal her neighbor's dog and dye it green. It was, in fact, a cat. I don't know if Taylor messed that up, but I think it's more likely she changed it for some reason, given how specific the rest of the details are. Maybe it's because she's a cat person, or maybe she herself once dyed one of her nemesis dogs green. Who knows with this woman. Genius did actually have a note that maybe it was to show how, as stories are passed on through generations, the smaller details can change, which I feel like is probably the most accurate description. But the idea of Taylor actually dyeing one of her enemy's dogs green is just too funny to give up on. So I would imagine with how many parallels there are between Rebecca and Taylor's lives that are just straight up uncanny, that when Taylor bought Holiday House and did her research, her jaw crashed through the marble floor. She'd been wanting to write a song about Rebecca for ages, and given folklore has a timeless, reflective vibe, it makes sense a historical look-back type song feels right at home on this album. Ultimately, Rebecca wasn't this horrible, mad woman that the town and press made her out to be, as we hear in the song's lyrics. How somehow this one woman was able to tarnish some grand dynasty just by being herself and having fun. All her good deeds conveniently forgotten as we delve into personal drama to demonize her. You could say she was cancelled. Even the fact she was a divorcee when she married Bill Harkness, who inherited a share of Standard Oil from his father, makes the town curious as to how she could possibly have married into wealth. To them, she's just damaged goods who wasn't born into wealth like them. Even the fact that her husband was new money was enough for people to talk some shit. For those who may not know, new and old money refers to a difference as to how certain parts of the upper class made their money. The old money folks inherited their wealth from family. They were literally born into power, prestige, and privilege, and tend to be more reserved in how they display their wealth, oftentimes disconnected from the general public, because they know if they flaunt their money, they will be guillotined. New money, by contrast, refers to people who initially were lower class and, by whatever circumstances, built their wealth and tend to be a bit flashier without class. ContraPoints talks about this in her video Opulence, which is great and you should watch it for all the pretty colors and set design. The townsfolk also don't seem too keen on the fact that Rebecca not only parties, but is just her own person altogether. To say that she gave up on the Rhode Island set means that she gave up on these games old money likes to play in looking the part. She refused to conform to how society expected her to act, and as such, she was scorned for it. She paces the rocks and stares out at the midnight sea, which honestly sounds like a whole ass vibe and aesthetic I can get down with. But to them, it's a signifier of just how weird she is. Personally, I think it's meant to reflect that Rebecca, either as a historical figure or character, tends to think deeply about life, and to the people around her, that is considered an oddity. People don't ponder in this town. People don't admire the sights or take walks because they feel like it. We just buy things. Taylor really sells home the connection and makes you realize what's going on with that perspective change at the end of the bridge. I love it when artists change up their choruses, and here Taylor uses that to emphasize the parallels between herself and Rebecca. How they're both kick-ass women doing their own thing, often upsetting people in the process who wish they'd just known their place and do as they're told. It is iconic as fuck. And of course, given folklore is about all these different stories across time that all of us can connect with, this song shows how someone can hear the story of another person that they never knew, who died long before they were even born, and still find themselves in this other person's story. Damn, being human is wild. Literally, only Taylor fucking Swift can make the story of how she bought a mansion into an iconic feminist ballad of utter relatability and fuck the rich energy. When she herself is rich, we stan. There is perhaps no more insidious a killer of relationships than miscommunication. Even if you have the best of intentions, if you are not honest in how you feel or even more aware of your own feelings, your connections can very easily corrode over time until they completely crumble. This is true for all of us, sometimes hoping not to say what we're feeling because we're afraid of hurting the other person, or convinced things will get better without us having to say a word. Or maybe you want to take out your grievances on your partner, and rather than tell them earnestly how you feel, you rely on passive aggression or more subtle methods that can come across as mind games after the fact. This is the story of exile. We become so certain of the narratives that we craft in our heads, and we're too arrogant or afraid to be vulnerable to just talk to the other person about how we feel, that we sit back and watch as misunderstandings and resentments erode our relationship until there's nothing left. Taylor's vocals go beautifully with Justin Vernon's, with Taylor playing the part of the person who ended the relationship and Justin the one left hanging. Each one is brutally honest in their feelings, yelling ceaselessly into the void, all the while talking past each other and unable to hear the other side. I mean, there's a reason hearing leaves us all wrecks crying on the kitchen floor, or any floor of your home. Any floor is yours. Justin's lyrics are rife with betrayal. He feels abandoned, tossed to the curb, and easily replaced by the one he loves, and wondering what he did wrong. Clearly he's messed up somehow, but he was never really told how. He was never given the chance to make up for whatever he did. And now he's left bitter, still deeply in love, but watching that love quickly turn into resentment. Taylor's lyrics, meanwhile, are soaked in exhaustion. She gave her partner every chance to do better, tried to signal to him that something had to be done before things gave way. But nothing changed. Why she couldn't tell her partner outright something was wrong is left up to interpretation. But I think it's something a lot of people know firsthand, either because they have done this, they've been on the receiving end of it, or perhaps they've been on both sides at different times. It could have to do with the lines,
I think I've seen this film before, and I didn't like the ending.
There's been mentions of film and cinema in other songs like The One, but here it seems to mean that both parties can foresee where this relationship is going. Or at least, they think that they can foresee it. Maybe they were right, but there's also a chance they were both wrong, and their impulse to jump ship could have prevented them from talking it out and making amends before deciding this wasn't working. At least then there would be closure rather than the anguish that they've both been left in. And now the pain lingers. Even with them so far away from each other, they're still processing all the grief and heartache. They've lost their homeland, their crowns, and now they're left to wander aimlessly and alone in exile. Honestly, that's how the end of a love can feel. Like you've been exiled from your own home. And Taylor's had lyrics about stolen crowns representing her power, or the thing that she cherishes most being taken away. Here, the crown more signifies her partner as the most important thing in her life, only to find herself leaving out the side door, trying not to make too big a show out of leaving. I don't know what it is about deep male country vocals Taylor is obsessed with, but honestly, girl, same. Justin's vocals are powerful while sincere, able to portray the raw emotions necessary to make the song a gut punch. And Joe's piano is mesmerizing. Side note, he wrote the piano and lyrics for the first verse, while Justin wrote the bridge. This song just would not work as anything but a duet. The sheer fucking glow up of writing breakup songs about your exes to writing breakup songs with your current partner? The power in that, goddamn. Oh, also, Taylor fangirling over working with Justin is precious and relatable as hell. How do you quantify pain? When someone you once loved hurts you, what hurts worse? Being completely blindsided and lost in the sting of betrayal, or knowing that both of you fucked up to lead you both here, and wishing that you could have stopped it somehow? My Tears Ricochet has had a very special place in my heart since I first listened to it. The imagery is both gorgeous and melancholic, painting a portrait of the narrator as a ghost, watching as the person who killed them has the gall to attend their funeral and run their mouth. How did we get here? How did the love that we once had turn into this?
It's kind of a song about karma. It's a song about greed. It's a song about how somebody could be your best friend and your companion and your most trusted person in your life, and then they could go and become your worst enemy, who knows how to hurt you because they were once your most trusted person. It does remind me of people going through a divorce and having that person they swore to be with forever, then become the person that they spend most of their time talking shit about. There's this beautiful moment in the beginning of a friendship where these people have no idea that one day they'll hate each other and try to really take each other out.
This is a deep fear that we all have, and some of us come to know it very well. For me personally, it's a sad but cathartic listen, perfect for when I need to get out the tough emotions. It's an honest plaint, a demand to the person who hurt you why they did it. The narrator doesn't try to act like a complete victim here, acknowledging their own mistakes. Even on my worst day, did I deserve, babe, all the hell you gave me? 'Cause I loved you. I swear I loved you till my dying day. You can hear that pain in the lyrics, with the narrator acknowledging how much they loved this person they're addressing, and admitting their own faults, but asserting they never deserved to be hurt the way that they were. And now they've passed. They're reflecting on the paradox of how people who once loved each other can also try to hurt each other. The pain each of them feels becomes a weapon, which perpetuates the cycle, hence the title evoking the imagery of tears ricocheting like bullets. This betrayal still hurts, lingering in the narrator's mind after all this time, because if a love they felt so strongly can lead to such devastation, then who's to say all love won't end that way? If someone you once cared for can hurt you so deeply and seemingly without remorse, so much so that it takes your life, then can you ever bring yourself to fully trust someone again? Of course, the answer is yes, but this is a very real place that people go to after they've been hurt like this. And I'm happy Taylor created a song that delves into that darkness without hesitation. I also adore the lyrics in the second verse. You know I didn't want to have to haunt you, but what a ghostly scene. You wear the same jewels that I gave you as you bury me. The narrator regrets how it all went down, and notes how the person who turned on her bears her gifts as he carries out the deed. That someone could hurt you this way, even after all you did for them. That is a painful image. The bridge in particular is one of my absolute favorites. The way the song builds in intensity as the lyrics get more and more visceral. And I still talk to you when I'm screaming at the sky, and when you can't sleep at night, you'll hear my stolen lullabies. The narrator admits that they wish things had gone differently, and knows if this is still affecting them this way, then surely it must be doing the same for the person who hurt them. It has to. It's ultimately a tragedy. It's the tale of a deep love that ended in flames, and now in the aftermath of that destruction, all that's left is that lingering pain. This song was actually the first one that Taylor had written before she realized this was going to become an album. And in that, it's even more cathartic. This reads like an autobiographical eulogy, addressed to someone who hurt her. And a lot of people associate it with Scott Borchetta selling the rights to Taylor's old albums to Scooter Braun. If you want to know the full details, I highly recommend Chats and Reacts video where they break down folklore into 4 parts. But to summarize, Taylor's first 6 albums from her debut all the way to Reputation were produced under the Big Machine Records label, headed by Scott Borchetta, who, from what I know, was very close with Taylor as like a mentor figure. Eventually, Taylor decided she wanted to own her music, as she believes all artists should own their work, which, yeah, she's right on that. But Big Machine refused to let her buy the rights back to her first 6 albums. Scott knew that eventually the label would be sold off, along with that, the masters to Taylor's old albums. There was apparently some sort of negotiation where Scott would sell back the rights to each album one by one to Taylor, but it was a trade-off situation where any new albums that she made would have to belong to Big Machine in return. And Taylor was not about that, because that is just shifty as fuck. And eventually, Big Machine was bought out by Scooter Braun's Ithaca Holdings, with Braun being someone that Swift has made no secret she is not fond of. Now, of course, Taylor is re-recording her old albums to reclaim ownership of her art, which is a queen move, but a lot of people have interpreted Folklore as a way for her to process this feeling of betrayal and grieve the loss of her old albums, which I definitely subscribe to, at least to some degree. It's totally normal for artists to process their experiences through their work, and the fact it's just considered normal for artists not to own what they create is reprehensible. On a lighter note, if you're a Swiftie, then you know that track 5 is gonna wreck you, every time. There is a tradition with Taylor's albums where track 5 is always meant to be one of the most, if not the most hurtful song on the album, very vulnerable, and Folklore's track 5 is easily my favorite from any of her albums. As for color, I tend to think of this song as black and blue, because not only does it hurt me in the soul, but also, the blue fits the tears and the water association, while black fits the imagery of the wake and also the gorgeous black waves of the lyric video. I swear to God, this woman will be the death of me, and my ghost will thank her. Oh, my friend Max also wanted me to mention how this song can potentially tie into The Haunting of Bly Manor. I still have to rewatch that series. I feel like I can't fully articulate it, so I'm gonna let Max do that shortly. But I will link a video by Lady Knight the Brave all about the show, because she breaks down why it's so good. Oh, she also did a video on Hill House, by the by.
My Tears Ricochet is a song about the demise of their very intimate relationship, and it sort of details how we can be haunted by our past and how the death of a relationship can literally leave ghosts that haunt us, and they can send remnants and echoes of that relationship to just sort of torment us. And it reminds me a lot of The Haunting of Bly Manor. Bly Manor is about a lot of things, but a big theme is people being haunted by their past. And we can see this in multiple couples throughout the show. The first couple I would like to talk about is Danny and Edmund. They were childhood friends, they were best friends, and they grew up and became romantic. But Danny is feeling really, really uneasy about marrying him. Just something doesn't feel right. So she tells him about this. He is very distraught. He steps out of the car because they have this conversation in the car. He is so distraught. He does not notice a big 18-wheeler coming. He gets murdered. He gets killed. He dies in this, because he gets hit by an 18-wheeler. And, Danny really blames herself. Spoiler alert, Danny is a lesbian. So that's why she wasn't really feeling that connection. That's why she wasn't feeling comfortable going, through with it. But, she really, really blames herself. And there are these moments where, she sees Edmund physically. Like, she sees him in his last moments with his glasses illuminated by the light of the headlights. And that's so haunting. And, she's really, really traumatized by this. And you can kind of have the show interpret it in a way where they leave it kind of ambiguous, where you don't really know if Edmund's ghost is real. You don't know if he's haunting her because he blames her, or you don't know if it's her own guilt and homophobia, internalized homophobia, sort of like seeping through in her psyche. And I think that just relating back to My Tears Ricochet, that's a really interesting metaphor for how like the ghost of our relationships and our past mistakes haunt us. Even if everything isn't necessarily our fault, we still blame ourselves and we still hold on to things. And I think that I don't know, it really makes me think of them from Bly Manor. But moving on to the next couple I wanted to talk about briefly. Bly Manor in the show is a physical place, and in the 17th century, it was owned by two sisters, Viola and Perdita. Their father had passed away, and they were women living in the 17th century, so obviously they had to get married so they were able to keep the property. Viola married this man. His name was Arthur. He was also a distant cousin, so take that as you will. But they fall in love, and they have a child. But Viola becomes ill, and her illness is slowly, having her waste away. So the people around her who love her, like her sister, her husband, her child, they're not really allowed to interact with her in the way that they, would want to interact with her, because, she's sick, and, they don't want to, they don't want to get sick. So she sort of kind of slowly withers away and deteriorates, and she's having a hard time letting go. Kind of directly relates to the line in My Tears Ricochet. I didn't have it in myself to go with Grace. She kind of couldn't move on. She kind of would refuse to accept her fate, and that kind of led to her downfall in her physical life, but also in her death. She kind of becomes so cold-hearted that the people around her start to dislike her, to the point where her sister Perdita kills her and murders her because she's such a fucking bitch, and marries her husband and sort of becomes her daughter's new mom. And, Viola's a ghost, because her spirit is just so indomitable. And she's just kind of holding on to this vendetta and this grudge. And, she ends up getting revenge on her sister. And, she's sort of waiting for this vindication that she never really gets. And the consequence for that is her roaming the halls of Bly Manor as a faceless ghost for all of eternity. So, but it really reminded me of the line, "I didn't have it in myself to go with grace. And so the battleships will sink beneath the waves. You had to kill me, but it killed you just the same. Cursing my name, wishing I stayed." You turn into your worst fears. And I think that sort of took a literal turn in this sort of case. And I think the lesson is not, obviously, if you get sick, it's not like if you get sick, just die. But I think the moral of the story is don't hold on to things, don't hold on to bitter and anger and things that do not serve you and do not, fulfill a greater purpose, because ultimately they're just going to drag you down, and they're going to drag literally the people around you down as well. And I think Bly Manor took that in a more literal sense, and I thought that was really interesting. Finally, I'd like to talk about the Wingrave family. So there's this guy, Henry, and he has an affair with his brother's wife. Her name is Charlotte, and they have a daughter together. And it's kind of like this love triangle situation. And it's kind of interesting because Charlotte thinks that, her husband doesn't know, but, he can do math, and he does the math. The math wasn't mathing, and he was upset about it. He hates his brother, obviously. He hates Henry, but he decides he's going to forgive his wife, and he decides that they're going to fix their family and whatever. So they go on a trip to heal their marriage, but they kind of die in a plane accident or whatever. So Henry blames himself for the death of his brother and his sister-in-law / lover, and he just sort of is literally haunted by his guilt and trauma in a literal sense throughout the events of the series. And I think again it ties back to being haunted by your mistakes in a relationship. And I think that even if something isn't 100% your fault, I think we can still sort of get into our own heads. Again, going back to that line, you turn into your worst fears, and you're tossing out blame, drunk on this pain, crossing out the good years, and it's like he is so debilitated by this crippling guilt that he can't even connect with his daughter or his nephew, and he can't really be there for the people that need him because of this. And it's tragic. It's really, 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 really tragic. And I think, there's another line I kind of want to briefly talk about where it's like, we gather stones, never knowing what they'll mean. Some to throw, some to make a diamond ring. I didn't want to have to haunt you, but what a ghostly scene. You wear the same jewels that I gave you as you bury me. That really made me think of Viola and Perdita, because she had these jewels that she left for her daughter, but her sister tried to steal them for herself. So that's the moment when her ghost took the revenge, and it was just it was interesting. It was a lot, but yeah, that's kind of all I really had to say about Bly Manor. I can make a whole video about Bly Manor and the parallels and synonyms, but thank you, Thomas, for giving me this little section to rant and talk about Bly Manor for a moment.
Disco is dead, but that's not gonna stop Taylor from using its aesthetic to make you cry like a bitch, while also dancing. Good luck dancing through your tears, by the by. Like Cardigan, Mirrorball is a song that is all about the connection between a creator and their audience. Taylor uses a mirror ball as a metaphor for creatives, a disco ball hanging over the dance floor, shining ceaselessly from all angles so that everyone can have a good time. But when the party's over, you're left behind, still dangling there, barely glinting with whatever light you can catch.
Sometimes when I'm writing to an instrumental track, I'll push play and I'll immediately see a scene set. And this is one of those cases where I just saw a lonely disco ball, twinkly lights, neon signs, people drinking beer by the bar, a couple of stragglers on the dance floor. Just sort of a sad, moonlit, lonely experience in the middle of a town that you've never been. And I was just thinking, okay, so we have mirror balls in the middle of a dance floor because they reflect light. They're broken 1,000,000 times, and that's what makes them so shiny. We have people like that in society too. They hang there, and every time they break, it entertains us. And when you shine a light on them, it's this glittering, fantastic thing. But then a lot of the time when the spotlight isn't on them, they're still there, up on a pedestal, but nobody's watching them.
The image of mirrors being shattered to create a disco ball captures how the greatest art usually comes out of a person's pain and traumatic experiences, transforming into something greater than the sum of its parts. Through your art, you do show people every version of themselves. Art and media make us reflect, no pun intended, and reconsider the way that we look at the world and each other. And likewise, you explore different facets of yourself through the creative process, maybe some of which you didn't even know about until you put yourself out there. Some lyrics I really love are, "You are not like the regulars, the masquerade revelers, drunk as they watch my shattered edges glisten." When you put yourself out there, you can be misinterpreted, or maybe some people just don't jive with your work. And that can hurt. It can be discouraging, leaving you feeling mocked and unwanted. But there can also be people who your work really resonates with. And just knowing that you affected someone that way can make the whole thing worth it retroactively. It can make you feel seen. There's also the aspect of code switching that's inside the song, changing the way that you act and present for different situations and different people. A lot of us feel like around certain people, we have to present a certain way to be respected or accepted. And that can be exhausting, specifically for LGBT people who are like, I would be myself, but I feel like if I were myself, you might punch me or tell me that my identity does not exist and isn't real. Which, like, I have enough to deal with, Carol. I don't need to add this to the list.
It was a metaphor for celebrity, but it's also a metaphor for so many people. Everybody feels like they have to be on for certain people. You have to be different versions of yourself for different people. Different versions at work, different versions around friends, different versions around family. Everybody has to be duplicitous, or feels that they have to be in some ways duplicitous. That's part of the human experience, but it's also exhausting. What does that do to us?
Mirrorball has an added layer of addressing the pandemic, or more the idea of living as a creative through the pandemic. The disco has been burned down, all the clubs are closed, so no one can dance. But through the darkness, you can still catch the light of the disco ball. You can still hear the music, however faint. Even when the end is drawing near, and it feels like the world is on fire and falling to pieces, artists can still give us reason to smile and move forward through their work. Sonically, Mirrorball isn't quite my jam, but I do absolutely adore the lyrics. Which does track, given lyricism is folklore's strongest point. And even then, the fact Taylor was able to create a disco lullaby that can make you both dance and fall asleep obviously means she's a witch. But we will not burn her. Instead, we will let her burn us with this fire she calls music. We all peaked at 7. Not in the sense that life was at its best back then, or that we really knew who we were before the world ruined us all. But don't you miss that innocence? That simplicity? Back before we all had to grow up and witness the horrors of the world and just how sad life can be with all the complexities that come with adulthood. Even the fact that most kids by nature are selfish is beautiful in a way. Because, as the song puts it, it was before we were taught to watch what we say and do, before we were taught civility. It was necessary so that we didn't wind up in a world where people do whatever they like at the expense of others' well-being. Well, in theory, wear your goddamn masks, please, and get vaccinated. But it's also sad to think of how many of us are afraid to let ourselves feel. We're scared to express and even experience our emotions the way that we did in our youth without a second thought. Like, the idea of crying in public or even just in front of some close friends is fucking mortifying. It's so easy to lose touch with who you are as you grow up, trying to shape yourself into what the world expects from you versus who you are and want to be. Back when we were unabashed in who we were and what we loved. When we created without fear of what others might say or think, or without the expectation of some monetary reward or career. When we said what was on our minds without wondering how that made us look to everyone. 7 is a reflection on all of that. That wonderful time that we all took for granted because we just didn't know what was coming. And how could we? It also serves as a reinforcement of this album as folk music, saying that the love in this song will be passed on like a folk song for generations to come. The story of these kids and their dumb misadventures will live on and be retold. The bridge, I think, really captures the spirit of the song, where the narrator is trying to comfort their friend. I think your house is haunted, your dad is always mad, and that must be why. It's hinting at these ugly realities people have to live with, and suggesting black and white solutions that fit the song's whimsical tone. Kids aren't stupid. They know shit is fucked. They just aren't as fazed by it yet. They're not quite fully jaded yet. And obviously that solution is that a ghost made your parents mean, and we should live in the woods together and play pirate until the end of time. I wish I could do that, goddamn. If only we could really just pack up and move with our friends to some magical land free of problems, without worrying about our responsibilities. And especially now we're all hoping that we're at the tail end of the COVID pandemic, when all most of us want to do is just enjoy the outdoors without needing to wear a mask and just hug our friends. But that said, don't be a clown. Get your asses vaccinated ASAP if you can. Link to resources in the description. And even if you're vaccinated, wear a mask to avoid carrying and spreading COVID to those who aren't or can't get vaccinated. And hopefully things will get better soon. And oh fuck, this is totally accidentally foreshadowing for Epiphany, goddammit. Oh, also, appreciation for the fact that track 7 is literally called 7. Simply superior aesthetic. We love to see it. And even the fact that track 8 is named for the 8th month. Speaking of which, love is a fickle thing. Especially when you're young, you can think that once you've fallen for someone, and maybe once you've taken that next step, that this is it. This is your soulmate. This is the person that you'll grow old with, and the person who will always choose you the way you always choose them. But then, it all falls apart. For whatever reason, it all crumbles, and you're left to pick up the pieces and figure out what the fuck just happened on your own, forcing you to find closure on your own. And then when you're an adult, you get drunk as fuck and laugh at how stupid it all was. How naive and foolish you were. Not through any of your own fault, because you just hadn't experienced enough of life to see what was coming and know better. It can take a long time to heal from that sort of thing, and to piece together what love even is after you realize it was just youthful infatuation. And that's what August is all about. A short-lived love that has burned out, and now the narrator is realizing just how fucked over they were all along. They had this fantasy of a beautiful summer love that caught flame and could have been something more, only to watch that passion be smothered by disappointment and heartbreak and transformed into bitterness. You could say it was a cruel summer, and now they're in the getaway car. Oh, send me to jail. Send me to jail. August is the second part of the love triangle, sung from the perspective of Augustine, the girl James cheated on Betty with. You don't normally get to hear the perspective of the other girl in stories like these. She's usually discarded, her perspective unvalued, considered nothing more than a homewrecker. But I don't think Augustine knew about Betty to begin with. She just fell for James, got led on, and then got ditched so that he could make it up to Betty. Which, like, good work there, James, on making Betty feel better, but leaving Augustine in the lurch was a dick move. But you don't know that, because men ain't shit.
August was obviously about the girl that James had this summer with, so she seems like she's a bad girl, but really, she's not a bad girl. She's really a sensitive person who really fell for him, and she was trying to seem cool and seem like she didn't care because that's what girls have to do. And she was trying to let him think that she didn't care, but she really did, and she thought they had something very real. And then he goes back to Betty. The idea that there's some bad villain girl in any type of situation who takes your man is actually a total myth, because that's not usually the case at all. Everybody has feelings and wants to be seen and loved, and that's all Augustine wanted was love.
I don't even think you need to have been cheated on or have turned out to be the other person to relate to this song. August captures how an innocent, powerful love can easily be transformed into anger and resentment once you've been wronged by someone that you care about. I absolutely love the wordplay in the chorus, but I can see us lost in the memory August slipped away into a moment in time because it was never mine, and I can see us twisted in bedsheets August sipped away like a bottle of wine because you were never mine. Oh god, that is fucking brilliant. How you can try to hold on to the memories of the good times with this person, but they'll slip through your hands like sand. How specific moments like sleeping together for the first time or sharing a particular bottle of wine can evoke these memories in you. It reminds me a lot of Cornelia Street, how these places and things from the time you were together in that relationship can stick with you, for good or for ill. Hell, it's a big part of why it took me so long to be able to enjoy Taylor's music again, without associating them with particular memories that would then drive me to downing an entire pint of ice cream at 2 a.m. It captures so many vivid moments and emotions in so few words. It makes you feel everything that Augustine felt. The bridge is especially potent. Back when we were still changing for the better, wanting was enough. For me, it was enough to live for the hope of it all, cancel plans just in case you'd call and say meet me behind the mall. So much for summer love and saying us, 'cause you weren't mine to lose. It's that moment of realization when everything hits you at once. You finally put the pieces together, that this was never the fairy tale romance that you thought it was, that you would have done anything for this person, tossed away any plans for even a sliver of their time, because just wanting it to work out was enough for you to keep on trying, to keep bashing your head into the wall in the hopes that you would see the stars. But in the words of the great Lillian Kaustupper, you can't just keep running into a brick wall. Of course, Augustine is still processing all of this, but she'll be okay. You always are. It may feel like the end of the world, but with a bit of time and some good friends, you'll pull through. You just have to realize that all of it was a hoax. No, I will not apologize for my folklore jokes. No, God no. This is one of Jack Antonoff's favorite songs that he produced with Taylor, and I can easily see why. As I mentioned, the bridge is absolutely legendary, and the outro does a great job capturing the righteous anger and pain Augustine is still going through, and still processing even once the song ends, as pointed out by Chats and Reacts in their folklore breakdown. I'm still not over the fact that the outro where she sings, "Remember when I pulled up and said get in the car?" was written literally while she was in her makeshift vocal booth recording the song. The audacity of this woman's creativity. And to think this song even started because Taylor wrote the lyric, "Meet me behind the mall," on her phone years ago, and wanted to turn it into a full song. Unbelievable. Unbe-fucking-leavable. Life is exhausting and often thankless. Some days it can be hard to just get out of bed, dreading what the day will throw at you next. From mundane responsibilities to difficult conversations, and even to random disasters and tragedies, time has a way of wearing us down. It seems no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, the end result always falls short and it's never good enough for the people around you. Or more likely, it's not enough for what the systems in place demand of you, and thus what they make you reinforce to yourself and internalize. It can get to a point where you're so drained and overwhelmed, you're desperate for a way to cope. And there are all sorts of unhealthy coping mechanisms out there that people fall into. In this mess of a world, I genuinely want to believe most people are trying their best. But even that belief can be eroded sometimes by how viciously life can kick you in the teeth when you're already down. I think we've all felt this at some point, even before the pandemic hit. Just trying to get by under capitalism is a bloody nightmare, and that eats away at all of us, especially those of us predisposed to suffer from mental and chronic illness. The second verse is about someone who felt like they had a lot of potential in their life. I think there are a lot of mechanisms for us in our school days, in high school or college, to excel and be patted on the back for something. And then I think a lot of people get out of school and there are less abilities for them to get gold stars. And then you have to make all these decisions and pave your own way, and there's no set class course you can take. And I think a lot of people feel really swept up in that. And so I was thinking about this person who is really lost in life and then starts drinking, and every second is trying not to. Taylor attributed this song to those who struggle with mental health issues, or any kind of obstacles that make daily life harder for someone compared to everyone else. Personally, I like to call it the "I'm out of spoons, but I still care" song. For those unaware, spoons is a mental health term used to describe how much energy a person has in a day. Each activity that they do, however seemingly mundane or small, takes a certain number of spoons, and once that person is out of spoons, they're left with no energy and have to recharge. The production of this song really carries that feeling of exhaustion. Taylor's vocals are mixed in with the music, and the reverb effect makes them feel heavy, similar to Epiphany, as though it's taking all her strength just to voice how she feels. Whether you're dealing with mental illness, chronic illness, or something else, these things chip away at your strength over time, and eventually it can make you feel burnt out and unsure of how to proceed. Especially when these problems are invisible, onlookers may feel as though you're making a mountain out of a molehill, that you're making excuses and half-assing what you're doing. But you never know what a person is dealing with behind closed doors. And for all you know, that person really is trying their best. It may be difficult to see things that way, but take a moment to let yourself believe someone who's frustrating you really is doing all that they can. This is easily one of my favorite songs off of the album for its mental health angle, especially with lyrics such as, "I have the shiniest wheels, now they're rusting. I didn't know if you'd care if I came back. I have a lot of regrets about that." Because sometimes you wonder if people would actually miss you if something happened to you, or you feel like you're not as interesting or productive as you may have used to be. They told me all of my cages were mental, so I got wasted like all of my potential. Oftentimes, your mind can get in your way more than any external circumstances. Specifically as a creator, it can feel like you constantly have to reinvent the wheel and reinvent yourself to keep your audience interested. And that can take a huge mental toll if you don't put proper boundaries and support systems in place. I have been through this before, and even recently, especially with lines like, "And my words shoot to kill when I'm mad." I have a lot of regrets about that. My God, who let me be an angry shithead with a Twitter addiction for so goddamn long. Now, this upcoming quote in particular is going to include a reference to the narrator's thoughts of suicide. If you would like to skip that, please jump ahead to illicit affairs in the chapter timeline. I'd been thinking about addiction, and I'd been thinking about people who are either suffering through mental illness, or they're suffering through addiction, or they have an everyday struggle. No one pats them on the back every day, but every day they are actively fighting something. But there are so many days that nobody gives them credit for that. And so how often must somebody who's in that sort of internal struggle want to say to everyone in the room, "You have no idea how close I am to going back to a dark place." I had this idea that the first verse would be about someone who is in sort of a life crisis and has just been trying and failing in their relationship, has been messing things up with the people they love, has been letting everyone down, and driven to this overlook, this cliff, and is just in the car going, "I could do whatever I want in this moment, and it could affect everything forever." But this person backs up and drives home. The idea that not driving off the cliff is an act of trying, which is almost the ultimate act of trying. So, I guess my point is, please take care of yourself. Your mental health is more important than whatever it is that you may be sacrificing it for, be it productivity, appealing to others, or anything else. Your value is not determined by how much work you can do, or how many people appreciate it. You are worthy, and you belong, and nothing can take that from you. And it's okay to need time to yourself to recharge and reflect on things without being even a little bit productive. That said, of course, a lot of these problems are systemic, so unfortunately a lot of it is out of our hands as individuals. Oh god, now I'm going down an existential nightmare rabbit hole. Oh god, I'm spiraling. This actually reminds me of a recent video essay that I saw on a Demi Lovato documentary. I recently listened to Demi's new album, The Art of Starting Over, and I very much enjoyed it. And I was curious as to the issues with mental health and eating disorders she's been dealing with. And I also found this incredible video essay by The Double Take called Demi's Problems Are Our Problems, where he actually analyzes how Demi's mental health issues and eating disorders are framed as an individual problem and that mental health problems like hers are more common than they actually are. And it's used as a way to give her employers, her management that have fed into this, along with the systems in place for Hollywood stars and celebrities like Demi, to give them all a pass for contributing to her issues. For putting her in a position where she, as the artist, is basically exploited. It kind of reminds me a bit of a certain record label that Miss Swift used to work for, that she really loved and thought believed in her, that may or may not have sold off the rights to her artistry under her nose to a certain piece of shit capitalist manager, who then sold it off to another holding company, as if these rich old bastards have a right to own work that isn't theirs, that they did not fucking create. I don't know, it's just interesting. It's interesting the way capital works, isn't it? So it's no wonder that artists like Taylor and Demi are susceptible to things like this. They are just as much victims of these systems as we are. I mention all this because at the end of this section of my script, I was going to recommend that if you have the resources, maybe you could talk about this like in therapy. But unfortunately in the US, a lack of universal health care means nearly 30 million Americans have no access to affordable medical care, let alone therapy, not even counting the underinsured. So again, unfortunately, a lot of these things are out of our hands as individuals, but we can at least try to do our best to be there for each other and show up for ourselves, but also demand systemic reform. I'm just throwing it out there. What would you do to keep the one that you love? What if you had to keep it hidden? You had to keep each other hidden from the other's life. Can love really be sustained by passionate rendezvous in hotel rooms alone? And beyond that, is it worth it when circumstances just won't allow it to take root anywhere else? Is it even the right thing to do? And is there even a right thing to do to begin with? Illicit Affairs is self-explanatory. A story of forbidden or secret romance, rife with all the contradictory emotions that come along with it. It's not even necessarily about cheating, but more broad in this idea that love can be something you have to hide for any number of reasons, and how that tension can make the experience more exhilarating, but also tragic and treacherous. Forbidden romance is the thing a lot of people idealize and fawn over, rooting for it to work out in the end through all the trials and tribulations. But it can also have adverse effects. When you refuse to let the light in, resentment has a way of festering within dark corners. Before performing Illicit Affairs, in the Long Pond documentary, Taylor mentions how with this album, she decided she does not need to tell stories strictly all about her own life in her music anymore. It's the moment I like to consider her full writer glow-up.
This was the first album that I've ever let go of that needed to be 100% autobiographical, because I think I felt like I needed to do that, and I felt like fans needed to hear a stripped from the headlines account of my life. And actually, it ended up being a bit confining, because there's so much more to writing songs than just what you're feeling in your singular storyline. I think it was spurred on by the fact that I was watching movies every day, I was reading books every day, I was thinking about other people every day. I was outside of my own personal stuff. I think that's been my favorite thing about this album. It's allowed to exist on its own merit without it just being, oh, people are just listening to this because it tells them something that they could read in a tabloid. It, to me, feels like a completely different experience.
This song gives me the vibe of someone who's head over heels for this love interest, willing to bend over backwards to live in the shadows just to be with this person, only to slowly realize this person would never do the same for them. Very similar to August, except here there is no pretense. There's no stringing someone along knowing you're headed towards a dead end. There's this unspoken understanding that this is a temporary, passionate fling and nothing more. And even still, the heart always wants more. Leave the perfume on the shelf that you picked out just for him, so you leave no trace behind, like you don't even exist. You have to cover your tracks. Make sure no one can piece together that you two have been seeing each other. and so you find special little ways to remember the time you spent with them that blend into the background for everyone else, and probably even the person you're infatuated with. I really appreciate both August and illicit affairs not demonizing these people who would normally be considered the homewrecker. It allows everyone to be humanized, to have a chance to tell their side of the story. The bridge is my favorite part because it shows the anger that this person holds boiling over. Enough pretending that you care and then tucking me away where no one knows I exist, where no one knows what we have. The narrator is putting out there just how much this person means to them and how far they would be willing to go for them and for this love. But it's shown in a way where it's clear how much they're hurting and that they likely won't be putting up with it for much longer. It could also work for an LGBT perspective, especially given how many LGBT people have to hide their relationships to protect themselves. I think a lot of trans folks specifically can relate to this, knowing someone is attracted to them and loves them, but that love can be tossed away or even turned violent when the person they're seeing prioritizes how society might disapprove. It's a very real experience for most trans women, especially trans women of color, a topic which ContraPoints discusses in her fantastic video, Are Traps Gay? Fellow transes, I promise you, it's just to lure in the cisheads to get them to listen. It can even happen to gay and bi trans people, with cis gays claiming that the biological sex you were assigned at birth is all that matters, and refusing to understand where trans people are coming from. I know when I listen to this song, one of the things that comes to my mind is the relationship between Angel and Stan of season 1 of Pose. Spoilers for Pose ahead, Pose takes place in New York City during the AIDS crisis in the 1980s and early 90s, following mostly Black and Latinx LGBT perspectives and ballroom culture. Angel is a trans woman who's had to resort to sex work to survive, and Stan is a cishet white banker on Wall Street who's bored of his life and confused by his attraction to trans women like Angel. A lot of that stems from how cisgender people often question whether trans people are in fact the gender they identify as. Spoilers, they are. But the way Pose explores it ends with Angel deciding she's not going to let herself be desperate for love from someone who sees her as something to experiment his attractions with and then toss away for his normal life. She wants to be loved for who she is and proudly displayed alongside her lover. And you bet your ass, she and Poppy are the real OTP. Oh my god, I'm still so upset that season 3 is the last season of Pose. What the fuck? So yeah, Illicit Affairs is fantastic and unexpectedly gay. We love to see it. Have you ever heard of the Red Thread of Fate? It's a Chinese myth that later disseminated into other parts of East Asia that's thought to connect people with their soulmates. There are plenty of variations, but I think it applies pretty well to this idea many of us hold on to that things happen for a reason. Now, generally speaking, it's an idea I think most of us grow out of as we get older and realize the world is a cold, uncaring, chaotic place where things just happen and there is no force behind it. But sometimes you need to tell yourself otherwise just to stay sane. I guess what I should be asking is, do you believe in destiny? RWBY fans take a collective traumatized sigh in 3, 2, 1. I'm done. But whether real or not, it is kind of funny the way things work out sometimes. We can never predict where our lives will go in the coming years, mainly because life is fucking complicated. The people you meet, the people you lose, and who you'll become, it's all a bit of a crapshoot as you try and survive whatever the world chucks at you next. Time, curious time, gave me no compasses, gave me no signs. Were there clues I didn't see? And funnily enough, you usually can see all the warning signs for all the disasters in retrospect. There's a reason they say hindsight is 20/20. Too soon? Taylor reflects on all of that here, contemplating what she and her partner Joe have been through and how it brought them to where they are now.
Sometimes I just go into a rabbit hole of thinking of how things happen, and I kind of love the romantic idea that every step you're taking one step closer to where you're supposed to be, guided by this little invisible string.
Taylor expresses this idea that every step you take in life leads you to where you're meant to be. And yes, I know it's silly and a bit naive, but I like to believe in this as well. albeit in the sense that if you're doing what's best for yourself and working on your flaws and shortcomings and growing, things will ideally begin to work in your favor, or at least you'll be able to handle your problems in a way where you can make them work to your advantage. It will essentially allow you to deal with whatever the hell the next problem is. It's also fun seeing how time can make us laugh at the pain we used to feel. Cold was the steel of my axe to grind for the boys who broke my heart. Now, I send their babies presents. Now, that is just precious. Seeing how over time we can laugh at the things that used to hurt us and make amends with people we thought we'd never want to speak to ever again, because life is just too short to hold on to those petty squabbles.
I wrote it right after I sent an ex a baby gift, and I was just like, man, life is great. And I just remembered thinking, this is a full signifier that life is great.
I also love the line, time, mystical time, cutting me open, then healing me fine. Again, the things that challenge us can make us into better, stronger people if we know how to tackle them. We can use our mistakes and fuck-ups to learn about ourselves and strive to do better. The bridge is one of the best. Something wrapped all of my past mistakes in barbed wire, chains around my demons, wool to brave the seasons. One single thread of gold tied me to you. Again, she uses gold for true love. Through all the pain and trauma, she found someone who helped her through it all. And in hindsight, it reads almost like the script for a movie, which is just beautiful. I also appreciate the references to her previous eras, like bad was the blood in the cab on your first trip to LA, and time, wondrous time, gave me the blues, and then purple pink skies, as in the purple pink aesthetic of the short-lived Lover era. And something I definitely appreciate is when Taylor references other songs within the same album, specifically the mention of having lunch down by the lakes. We love a good reference to my favorite song, foreshadowing. Peace ain't the most peaceful song on the album, Invisible String is, and I ain't budging on that. When I listen to this, I feel like I'm in the clouds, looking back on my life with fondness, even at the sadder and more painful moments. Because it makes me happy with where I am, and excited to see where I might go next. And I think that's something a lot of us could use right now. See? Folklore ain't all sad, just mostly sad, with a twinge of hope cutting through. Or sometimes, madness. Okay, Mad Woman. This is gonna be fun. I'm pulling it up for atmosphere. Let's fucking do this. Have you ever had your anger turned against you? Someone who has hurt or wronged you in some way, and then it feels like as if you being upset is suddenly a crime of its own. You're told you're overreacting, or that you're oversensitive, or it's your fault for not getting the joke. It's a feeling that most women feel, along with any marginalized person, when they try to speak up for themselves. Just in general, I think most people have felt this some way before. What did you think I'd say to that? Does a scorpion sting when fighting back? You don't blame a scorpion for stinging you when it's trying to defend itself. So why am I the bad guy when you're the one who came after me in the first place? Every time you call me crazy, I get more crazy. What about that? As though you weren't the one who'd driven me to this in the first place. This song's a bit tricky for me to talk about, given its message is primarily about sexism. Women often have their emotions used against them systemically, told they can't be rational, and that they're overly aggressive when they simply assert themselves. A man reacts, a woman overreacts. And yes, I know my voice suggests someone very feminine. Y'all have made that assumption abundantly clear over the years. For clarity, I'm non-binary, assigned male at birth. He, him, or they, them, gay as hell, by the by. But Taylor has definitely faced her fair share of sexism over the years. There's a fantastic video by Not Corey entitled, "You Don't Hate Taylor Swift, You're Probably Just Sexist," where he breaks down all the popular reasons people cite for their distaste of Taylor and her music, and debunks each one thoughtfully and earnestly. Don't worry boys, the title is just to draw y'all in, so you'll give it a listen. I know you will, because you're all about rationality. Taylor's work is often reduced to, well, she just writes about her exes cause she's petty, when it's perfectly normal for all artists to write about their experiences, including romantic ones. No one's out here calling male artists bitter when they write about women who broke their hearts. Moreover, there was that whole craze about calling her a serial dater in the 1989 era, a concept which she parodied in the iconic Blank Space music video. Even minor misunderstandings and conflicts with other artists, particularly female artists, were amplified by the media and reported as full-scale feuds. Simply by being a prominent female artist, this is how the world treats her and sees her. Like, all she did was write music about being a sad girl in love and date like a normal human being. What a crime. Especially through all the slights and betrayals from Kanye West. We will not forget the leaked full phone call, oh my god. From running on stage while she's accepting an award to take her moment away, to having his wife edit a phone call to twist the truth and turn the world against her. And even recently with Scott Borchetta refusing to let Taylor buy back her old albums and selling them off to Scooter Braun. All these things had to be devastating to go through. And all the while, a not insignificant number of people's response was, get over it and stop adding fuel to the fire. As though Taylor has done something to deserve these things. Or anyone deserves these things? It frustrates me so deeply when people call Taylor a brat and that she's just lashing out because of the Scooter Braun stuff with her losing her masters. All she's saying is that she believes artists should own their work, which I agree with. I don't think that's a controversial statement to make. Side note, Beyonce taking the time to chew Kanye out and graciously give up her own time accepting an award so Taylor can get hers back? Amazing. Iconic. We stand queens sticking together. Oh my god. As Taylor says in You Need to Calm Down, we all got crowns. No need to compare when each of us are royalty and we all have our own kingdoms.
The most rage-provoking element of being a female is the gaslighting that happens when for centuries we've been expected to absorb male behavior silently. Oftentimes when we, in our enlightened and emboldened state, respond to bad male behavior, or somebody doing something that was absolutely out of line, and that response is treated like the offense itself. There's been situations recently with somebody who's very guilty of this in my life, and it's a person who makes me feel, or tries to make me feel, like I'm the offender by having any kind of defense to his offenses.
That all said, I think any marginalized person knows how this feels in some flavor. We're considered overly emotional whenever we talk about important issues that affect us, and told we're making things political simply by existing, or by acknowledging the fact the world treats us differently because of who we are. The more marginalized you are, the more true this is likely to resonate for you. Or maybe not. We all got different experiences, but who we are, what we look like, and who we love will all inevitably paint that experience a certain way. It's infuriating having your righteous anger be used against you, told that even if you've been wronged, you must express that courage in a morally acceptable way, and often having your reaction treated as the original offense. When you live in a world where you're often assumed to be the bad guy, what do you expect someone's reaction to look like? And even beyond that sentiment, this song encapsulates what it's like to feel like someone has hurt you, to bottle it up and let it fester over time, and when you stand up for yourself, suddenly you're just as bad, if not worse. And the people who hurt you often know this. They'll go after you relentlessly, and the moment you snap back, the trap springs. And now suddenly the story is how you attacked without provocation. Apparently Aaron came up with the piano, and Taylor immediately identified the sound as that of female rage, and I'm gonna take her word on it. I certainly picture a calm but powerful fire underneath those strings. I don't think we're acutely aware just how fragile life is until either it's nearly taken from us or we see it taken from someone close to us. Maybe not even someone we love. A relative, a friend, a coworker, or maybe even a celebrity that we admire. It doesn't even have to have been a positive relationship to leave you at a loss for words. Especially when we're younger, we feel invincible, like we have the rest of time to do whatever we like, to pursue our dreams or just to get drunk with our friends and take a shot every time America embarrasses itself. But we don't have forever. We're lucky we were even born, able to experience even a sliver of what the universe has to offer before we're gone. And hopefully most of our lives are relatively peaceful, with only minor scrapes and bruises gathered along the way. But for those who got through unspeakable traumas like war, famine, or plague, seeing just how easily life can slip away can change you completely. Epiphany takes the experiences of Taylor's grandfather and others who went through the hardships of war and uses that as a frame of reference for what frontline healthcare workers have been enduring since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic.
I had been doing a lot of research on my grandfather, who fought in World War II at Guadalcanal. which was an extremely bloody battle, and he never talked about it. Not with his sons, not with his wife. Nobody got to hear about what happened there. And so my dad had to do a lot of research, and he and his brothers did a lot of digging, and found out that my granddad was exposed to some of the worst situations you could ever imagine as a human being. And so I tried to imagine what would happen in order to make you never able to speak about something. When I was thinking about that, I realized that there are people right now taking a 20-minute break in between shifts at a hospital who are having this kind of trauma happen to them right now that they will probably never want to speak about.
It's hard to believe it's been over a year since all this started. And while the vaccine is here, even though people are scared to take it for whatever reason, I don't know why. I got fully vaccinated and I feel great. I don't think life is ever going to go back to how it was before. We've seen how our government knew this was coming and failed to act to protect us. We've seen our private healthcare systems fail to keep us all covered and make it easier for people to seek help in the midst of the crisis. We've seen people forced back to work to keep the economy going, just so that they can afford to barely survive and feed their families, barely getting the help that they need to get by as they risk their lives. All the while, corporations receive aid, no question, to keep up their profits. The healthcare workers, the doctors and nurses who've had to work themselves to the bone to keep people alive, all the while realizing that they were in no way prepared for something like this. I don't think this kind of trauma that they've experienced can be put into words. The lyrics set the scene of a patient being lost, while the doctor holds onto their mother's hand through plastic to protect each other from infection, but to also show that they're here for each other as human beings. And the production sounds reminiscent of a heart monitor beeping before ultimately fading out, something med school did not cover. Epiphany tells the story of people in the middle of a horrific crisis, witnessing unspeakable traumas that will haunt them for the rest of their lives, and praying for some kind of relief in the brief moments of rest that they can barely scrounge together. That this is all part of some divine plan, some kind of promise that things may eventually get better if you just hold on tight enough. There's also this recognition of how sometimes your power over your own life is taken away. Taylor mentions how, through reflection on writing this album, how interesting it was how things in her life came undone only to come back together, as though life was reorganizing everything on her behalf. It's kind of like invisible string in that regard, except recognizing the nastier parts of life that seem to happen without rhyme or reason. And I appreciate that recognition, and the peace that comes with accepting that not everything is in your control. I think that's easier to deal with when you realize that even while we're socially distancing ourselves, or we should be, each of us can do our part to try and make things a tad more bearable for each other. With you I serve, with you I fall down. If I had to say which folklore song is the most underrated, my answer would probably be Epiphany. It's the heaviest given what it's pulling from, and the most different from the others in terms of production. It's ethereal, beautiful, and tragic all at once. But on a real note, the pandemic is far from over. I know we wish we could go back to normal, but safety comes first. If you can, get your ass vaccinated and encourage people who can get vaccinated to get theirs. Show how you got vaccinated and you are feeling great, and now you have a little bit more freedom to move about. Sometimes that's enough for people, seeing someone that they know and they trust getting the vaccine and being okay for them to go, okay, I feel comfortable getting it too. The more people we can get vaccinated, the sooner we can get through this. Right here, I'm gonna plug the Last Week Tonight episode all about the COVID-19 vaccines. And even when you're vaccinated, make sure that you still wear your mask when you're out in public. If you can, of course. By which I mean you might have some chronic illness or medical reason for not being able to wear your mask at all times, which, cool, but if you can wear your mask, make sure that you do it in public. Even if you can't get sick, the virus can still use you to travel, spreading even further and increasing the risks of mutation. And for the love of God, if someone you know is saying COVID is a hoax, please slap the shit out of them. We did not lose over 500,000 people to this, to have your Uncle Jimmy scream on Facebook about how masks are oppressive. Stay safe, get vaccinated. I love all y'all. We'll get through this together. Oh, also, for any anti-vaxxers you know in general, especially right now, really recommend H. Bomber Guy's recent video all about vaccines, because he delves into the origins of the anti-vax movement. And oh my god, it's a fucking mess. Oh, if that can't convince an anti-vaxxer that what they're doing is insane, I don't know what will. Has anyone else ever caught themselves wondering what it would look like if someone who hurt you were to randomly appear out of the blue and try to make things up to you? What they might say, what they might do, how they just pour out their heart and put it in your hands for you to judge whether they're worthy of forgiveness? No? Just me again? Oh geez, tough crowd. But seriously, this song perfectly captures the thoughts of a dumb, cishet teenage boy who doesn't know no better. His worldview is so simple. He fucked up, he hurt his girlfriend, and he's now trying to explain himself and make things up to Betty. I'm only 17, I don't know anything, but I know I miss you. This song concludes the love triangle. Here, James is talking to Betty in his head, trying to figure out what to say and how she might react. He's actually putting in the work to figure out how what he did hurt her, and it makes us want to root for him, even if we may be shaking our heads at this dumb boy. Like, oh my god, James, you dense son of a bitch. The cadence of Taylor's vocal sounds exactly how I'd expect your average guy to be spouting all this. You heard the rumors from Ines, you can't believe a word she says. Most times, but this time it was true. And even the fact he thinks this is the worst thing he's ever done in his 17 years of life thus far is hurting Betty is so precious, capturing his earnestness? We even feel his anxiety as we hit the bridge, where he references the broken cobblestone from Cardigan, as well as Augustine riding up to tempt him. Augustine fucking slander, I will not tolerate this. That swells in the final chorus, where he puts his plan into motion, and he's indeed shown up at the party and asking Betty what she'll do next. He wants her back, and he wants to patch her broken wings and see her fly again. The line, "Will you kiss me on the porch in front of all your stupid friends?" fucking sent me. I also adore so many of the covers of the song from Betty's perspective, so I'll be sure to link those as well below. In a way, this song is how we wish someone would act after they hurt us. The dream of how they'd actually reflect on why they did what they did, own up to it, and make a big dumb show out of making it up to us. It's super cute, simple, and uplifting. Something that is desperately needed on this album, an album so rife with darker emotions, especially right after Mad Woman and Epiphany. But what certainly tracks with James' nonchalance, typical for his gender and age, is the way he writes off Augustine as a simple mistake. Something, not even someone, that tempted him. But even when he was with her, his heart was still with Betty, because men ain't shit. Men ain't shit! And I will not tolerate Augustine mistreatment in my house. No, sir! James, get the fuck out and think about what you did, probably drunk under a streetlight. Funnily enough, Taylor made Cardigan with Aaron, then made August with Jack, and then made Betty with the both of them, which adds to how this feels like the natural ending of this love triangle storyline before we dive into the album's last few tracks that apply a bit more directly to Taylor, and return to that reflective, pensive vibe. Also, Joe apparently sang the whole chorus of this. Like, the full finished chorus. Because he's perfect. Oh, also, that harmonica race. Whew, peace. I have to make sure I have enough anxiety for this one. Joy is terrifying. When you're so used to things going wrong, to life going off the rails, things going well for a change brings its own kind of fear. You get into this place where you're convinced the other shoe is gonna drop, that the universe is messing with you, letting you get comfortable before it rips everything away from you and leaves you broken again. But the weather never stays the same. When it's clear out, you're ideally not wondering when it's gonna rain again. No, you're outside enjoying the sunshine and the breeze. At least as best you can in a post-COVID world. And when it rains, you know eventually the clouds will part and the sun will be back. Treating life like it's all a calm before the storm isn't gonna do you any good. It's not gonna change that the storm will be here at some point. That's something I've been trying to reinforce to myself for a long time now. That it's not helpful nor healthy to wait for something to go wrong. 'Cause honestly, it will. And that's not to say life is terrible or constantly miserable, but that you can't control when life raises you up on the highest peak, nor when it dumps you into the deepest valley. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where you're wallowing in your own gloom, and it's so easy to get stuck there and never get out. Ironically, this is the least peaceful song on the album for me. I know a lot of people, Taylor included, think otherwise, and I can see why with that beautiful guitar. But the lyric video's visuals, along with the production of the song, especially the lead into the second verse, makes me feel like I'm in the middle of this wide open plain with nothing to see for miles, all while dark storm clouds are rolling in, thunder is shaking the ground beneath my feet, and the rain and lightning are about to fly. And that beat at the very beginning makes me think of a heartbeat when you're high on anxiety. And then I start feeling anxious, and then the lyrics make me more anxious, and it's a very fun spiral from there. Which honestly works with the message of the song. This acute fear where you love someone and you're willing to rake yourself across the coals for them, but the one thing you can never give them is peace. You can't give them a quiet, relaxing life free of problems, because something in your own life, or something intrinsic to you, means new problems will always be just around the bend. It's only a matter of time. The question is, does that make you unlovable? Is that something that the person you love can handle?
This is a song that's extremely personal to me, because there are times when I feel like, with everything that's in my control, I can make myself seem like someone who doesn't have an abnormal life, and I try that every day. Every day it's like, how do I make myself, among my friends and family and my loved ones, not see this big elephant that's in the room for a normal life? Because I don't want the elephant in the room. If you're going to be in my life, I feel like there's a certain amount that comes with it that I can't stop from happening. I can't stop you from getting a call in the morning that says, the tabloids are writing this today. I can't help it if there's a guy with a long lens camera 2 miles away with a telescope lens taking pictures of you. I can't stop those things from happening. And so this song was basically, is it enough? Is the stuff that I can control enough to block out the things that I can't?
But I'm a fire and I'll keep your brittle heart warm. If you cascade ocean wave blues come. All these people think love's for show, but I would die for you in secret. You're willing to do all you can for the person that you love, to make them feel safe and happy, but you always wonder, will it be enough? Would I be enough if I could never give you peace? In the documentary, Aaron talks a bit about his struggles with depression, and it's clear he and Taylor use that as a bit of a springboard, along with her own fears of losing lovers to how much media attention that she receives, and the fact she can't even leave home without having to disguise herself. May I direct you back to the bold waitress from Invisible String who recognized her down by the lakes, who said she looked like an American singer. Girl, if that were me, I would run for the fucking hills. In both cases, it's something that just comes with who they are, and they fear it's something that will make maintaining love unattainable, or at the very least, make it tiresome. And that's a theme that's explored heavily on Reputation. Second best album she's ever made, don't at me. Yeah, I'm a rep stan. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Taylor's take reminds me of Clean from 1989. That song was all about getting over a past relationship, but it also resonated with so many people who were struggling with addiction, and Taylor welcomed that interpretation. It just goes to show that power that these stories hold, that their complexities, all these layers, can hold so many different meanings to different people, and how we each interpret media differently given our own experiences. The human experience is truly a kaleidoscope of beauty and trauma. A rainbow mirrorball, if you will.
It makes me really emotional to hear this song, and to know that a lot of people related to it who aren't talking about the same things that I'm talking about. They're talking about human complexity.
I have in my life suffered from depression, and I'm a hard person to be in a relationship with or be married to because I go up and down, and I can't help it. It's a chemical thing that happens sometimes, and music is a way of dealing with that for me. And somehow peace captures the fragility of what that's like, to be in a relationship with someone who may or may not have peace. It's a very real fear most people have in relation to their mental health, chronic illness, or whatever their insecurities may be, however small. None of us are perfect. We are all works in progress, and sometimes that means your problems are gonna fuck up your relationships. But it's also important to realize this isn't just the case for you, it's true for everyone. Love isn't about putting your partner on a pedestal and thinking they're flawless. It's about seeing them as they are, flaws and all, and loving them not even despite their flaws, but by putting those flaws into perspective. Your integrity makes me feel small. You paint dreamscapes on the wall. I talk shit with my friends. It feels like I'm wasting your honor. Trust me, there's no honor to be wasted. So long as you put the work into bettering yourself and understanding yourself, you will find the love that you deserve. But it first has to come from yourself. The people who matter, friends and romantic partners alike, will help you when you need it. They'll call you out as needed. They'll catch you when you fall, and you them. That's where true peace comes from. Not from some picturesque ideal that you have in your head that could never be, but from knowing you have people who've got your back no matter what. I also appreciate the line, "The devil's in the details, but you got a friend in me." It's an acknowledgement that trying to make it all work is gonna feel like hell, but damn if an honest effort won't be made. You could say that this is me trying, because it's nice to have a friend. Y'all need to put some damn respect on "It's Nice to Have a Friend's Name," because that song captures the fact that the best loves are born from deep friendships. That song deserved better. That song deserved so much better. Also, The Archer. I admittedly, used to be very mean to The Archer, but I am sorry, Archer. Especially as a Sagittarius, like, the disrespect. The disrespect! Maybe it's because it dragged me across the coals, and subconsciously at the time I was like, please don't do that. Whereas now I'm like, drag me! Drag me, yes! I'd give you my sunshine, give you my best, but the rain is always gonna come if you're standing with me. And when you find the right people, that's not gonna make them run for the hills. It's not gonna make them blame you for the awful weather. Instead, they'll know to bring along some raincoats, galoshes, and a very large umbrella. Ideally one that's also a gun. Yes, I just inserted a Ruby reference in here because I can. Swifties, if you haven't seen Ruby, it's very bad. It's very bad. I don't know what my point was going to be. It's wow, alright. I'll also love the line, "Give you the silence that only comes when two people understand each other." Now that is one of the most peaceful things in the world. And if you ever find that with someone, don't be afraid of it. Cherish it. Hoax. Okay, it's time for some more sad bitch hours. If love ends, was it all for naught? If someone you came to love hurt you, used everything they treasured with you to try and destroy you, was that love ever real? All the late night conversations, all the words of affection, and all the broken promises. What do you do with them? Do you toss those memories out, or do you lock them away in the attic, hidden from sunlight to collect dust for however many years until your heart stops hurting? The hoax can refer to a number of things simultaneously. It can be laughing at how the people you loved turned on you or left you behind, like My Tears Ricochet, but it can also be you wondering why other people still bother sticking around even in your lowest moments. Both the beauty and terror in the fact that love brings meaning to life, but it can also bring harm when it sours or dies. Honestly, after you go through something so soul-shattering, so devastating, you might actually find yourself believing there is something inherently unlovable about yourself. That the people who stick by you are only there out of pity. That it's only a matter of time until they leave, and it will all be your fault. But maybe, just maybe, you decide to humor them. You decide to give their promises the benefit of the doubt, against whatever your fear or past experiences might be telling you. Your faithless love's the only hoax I believe in. This song is actually a lot like My Tears Ricochet. To me, their visuals share a connection to water, probably thanks to the lyric videos, along with the lyrics themselves referring to tears, waves, and the color blue. My Tears Ricochet is the emotional reaction to the betrayal, screaming at the other person, demanding to know why they did what they did, and why they refused to leave well enough alone as you tried to. Hoax, by stark contrast, sits in that pain, and in a way looks back fondly on everything that led up to it. It's peak gallows humor. If a love ends tragically, does that mean it wasn't worth it? Does the pain and trauma erase all the joy that it once brought? Was the connection itself a hoax until the bitter end? Funnily enough, this theme does get explored further in Evermore, but Hoax isn't quite at the conclusion of, say, Happiness. Hoax is still processing her pain, and she's taking her time figuring out how she feels about all this, let alone how she'll move through it. Lyrically, this song is one of the simplest, but the bridge is what elevates it. You know I left a part of me back in New York. You knew the hero died, so what's the movie for? You knew it still hurts underneath my scars when they pulled me apart. You knew the password, so I let you in the door. You knew you won, so what's the point of keeping score? You knew it still hurts underneath my scars from when they pulled me apart, but what you did was just as dark. Darling, this was just as hard as when they pulled me apart. The narrator reflects on this betrayal. They've had Cupid's arrow shot directly through their heart and out the other side. They've trusted only to be pushed off the cliff when they weren't looking. They've been scarred, left shaken by all the ways life can hurt you on its own and wear you down. But this was the last place they expected to be hurt. Their guard was down for just a moment, and they were left wide open. My only one, my kingdom come undone. My broken drum, you have beaten my heart. Of course, this relates to Taylor's albums being taken from her, hence the heart being a drum that's about to cave in at the slightest hit. The bridge even refers to how she disappeared from the public following her 2016 drama before she returned with Reputation. And this, losing her masters, having Scott do this to her after all they've been through together, this hurt just as much as the world hating her, ready to burn her like a witch. I've heard this album described as poetry turned into music, and those folks ain't wrong. Most, if not all, the lyrics read like well-crafted prose, and Taylor's always made sure that her diction is pleasing to the ear, ebbing and flowing with the emotions behind the words. Part of that involves focusing not only on what the words you choose mean, but also how they sound when strung together. I agree with Taylor that hoax is a beautiful word. Aesthetically, it's short, sweet, and mysterious thanks to the little X at the end. Unassuming, but dangerous. And in the context of folklore, it's a powerful ending to the album.
The word hoax is another word that I love. Because I love that it has an X, and I love the way it looks, and I love the way that it sounds. I think with this song being the last song on the album, it embodied all the things this album was thematically. Confessions, incorporating nature, emotional volatility and ambiguity at the same time. Sort of love that isn't just easy, and it's the most symbolic, poetic thing, listing all these things that this person is to you. I remember I asked Aaron for advice on this one. I think I said, what if not all these feelings are about the same person? What if I'm writing about several different, very fractured situations? One is about love, and one is about a business thing that really hurt. And one is about a sort of relationship that I consider to be family, but that really hurt. That line about, you know it still hurts underneath my scars from when they pulled me apart. Anyone in my family knows what I'm singing about there, but everybody has that situation in their life where you let someone in, and they get to know you, and they know exactly what buttons to push to hurt you the most. That thing where the scar healed over, but it's still painful. They still have phantom pain. I think the part that sounds like love to me is, don't want no other shade of blue but you. No other sadness in the world would do. To me, that sounds like what love really is. Like, who would you be sad with? And who would you deal with when they were sad? Gray skies every day for months. Would you still stay?
That description of love is utterly beautiful. Being willing to sit with someone in their darkest moments and know they'd be willing to do the same for you and yours. You balance each other out, and that can be platonic or romantic. Love is so much more complicated and so much messier than we often think it is. For Taylor, it works as her speaking to her old label after they sold her art out from under her. To Joe, who's been her rock through it all. To the fans, who even after all these years, all these albums, all these highs and lows, all these genre changes, are still here. Still listening. And still obsessing over every Easter egg. Hoax is the perfect way to end the album. After reflecting on all these different stories, these disparate folk tales of scattered scars, it can leave you in a dark place, or make you realize this journey has been far more tragic than you might have initially thought. Leave you wondering why we bother carrying on, when people can leave or be taken from us. When life can be so chaotic and cruel, why bother getting out of bed? Why bother waking up when you could just go back to sleep listening to the rain outside? But then, the rain stops. The clouds part, and the sun breaks through. You peek out the covers and look through the window, and you think to yourself how nice it might be to cry atop those Windermere peaks, just over the horizon. Never before the age of social media has the world felt so small. You can connect with people across the globe, creating wonderful friendships that would never have been possible otherwise. Especially during a pandemic, you'd think the fact we all have Wi-Fi would be a blessing, keeping us all in touch with each other. But in a lot of ways, it's done the exact opposite. As we have thoroughly established, the world is a bit of a shit show right now. No matter where you go, whether you're watching TV or on your phone, you're constantly bombarded with even more bad news, even more vitriol, and you're left to wonder, when the fuck that pizza guy is gonna leave the food on your doorstep via contactless delivery so you can eat your feelings and cheese? I mean peace. Peace and cheese. Peace cheese. Cheese shall bring peace to the world! Or lactose intolerance. I'm not sure. This is what happens when you lose your mind over the course of several years. This is why you shouldn't be a YouTuber. Don't do it. Don't do it, bitch. Don't be a writer. Actually, no. If you are insane, it probably is best to be a writer because the only other option would be like, I'm not even going there. What the hell? What the hell was this? I veered so far off script. So much of folklore is about solitude. Being okay with being alone, working through your feelings, and reflecting on your experiences, and using that to grow. Along with that, folklore's emphasis on stories from different perspectives encourages compassion. You're meant to empathize with literally anyone and see the world through their eyes. And in that, this album seems a more transformative, comforting outlet of both escapism and growth than doom scrolling on Twitter. The Lakes is my favorite Taylor Swift song, probably my favorite song of all time right now, and has been since I first listened to it. It whisks me away to the lakes up in the mountains, sitting among the roses and wisteria and watching the clouds roll by in complete true peace. When I was writing the first draft of the script, I was up at 1:30 a.m. when I should have been in bed, all alone listening to folklore and sitting with my emotions, completely detached from the rest of the world. And it's so hard to be able to maintain that solitude when your job requires you to care about other people's opinions. You know, when you do videos and your books to soon be released. Knowing other people will hear or read what you say and judge it. It is hard to be vulnerable knowing you have so many eyes watching. This is the true ending of the album. It's sad, yes, how the narrator has been driven from the public eye and is grieving all that they've gone through, that the pain is still there, burrowing under their skin, when whatever caused it is long gone. But it's also happy. It's excitement at the thought of escaping into nature with the one you love, shutting out the rest of the world, and creating for creativity's sake. And no one else's. Taylor discusses in the documentary how this is actually about the Lake District in England, so I think I'll let her explain.
The Lakes sounds like a testament of what I've wanted to escape from and where I saw myself escaping. We'd gone to the Lake District in England a couple years ago. In the 19th century, you had a lot of poets like William Wordsworth and John Keats, who would spend a lot of time there. There was a poet district. These artists that moved there were heckled and made fun of for it as being these eccentrics and odd artists who decided they just wanted to live there. And I remembered when we went, I thought, man, I could see this. You live in a cottage and you've got wisteria growing up the outside of it. Of course they escaped like that. Of course they would do that. And they had their own community of other artists who had done the same thing. In my career, since I was about 20, I've written about this sort of cottage backup plan. I've been writing about it forever. So The Lakes is about relating to people who hundreds of years ago had the same exit plan and did it. I went to William Wordsworth's grave and just sat there. And I was like, wow, you went and did it. You just went away and you kept writing. But you didn't subscribe to the things that were killing you. And that's really the overarching thing that I felt when I was writing folklore. I may not be able to go to the lakes right now, or to go anywhere, but I'm going there in my head. I thought it would be the perfect way to slot the last puzzle piece in right when people least expected it. Because Hoax as the ending song for the record I thought was interesting for a couple weeks. But then I wanted to actually come in with the real last song of the record, which shows you the overarching theme of the whole album, of trying to escape, having something that you want to protect, trying to protect your own sanity and saying, look, they did this hundreds of years ago. I'm not the first person who's felt this way.
It's a really potent statement right now. I think the idea of getting away and figuring out how to remove the things that are not working in one's life is the story of this time. If you're not thinking about that, I don't know what you're thinking about. Taylor has expressed this desire to escape from the public eye many times before, going off into her own little bubble, making her art, and enjoying her peace. Something she's been trying to do since the Reputation era. Even before then with Red and The Lucky One. All about prioritizing her privacy. Even back in Call It What You Want, she asks her lover, Joe, if he'd run away with her. And now it seems they've indeed run off. They've run off to the lakes. It's a dream that novelists refer to as the hermit author. A creative who publishes their work and has a dedicated fan base, but doesn't have to put themselves personally out there to be successful and can enjoy their own privacy. And generally speaking, that ideal is now considered dead in publishing, and honestly in every other creative field as well, which is so sad. Because we've discussed in other songs like Cardigan and Mirrorball, how having to be different versions of yourself, all entertaining, scintillating, yet acceptable, all at once for every single person is not only exhausting, but incredibly damaging. It's no wonder that creatives historically have just wanted to say, fuck it, and run off into the woods to forget it all. And honestly, same. I haven't even published yet and I'm already sold. Side note, anybody know any real good real estate agents who specialize in gay cottagecore? Please? Anyone? Taylor also starts the song by posing to you. Is it romantic how all my elegies eulogize me? An elegy is a poem written for the dead, and to eulogize someone is to write about them as to celebrate them and their achievements, usually after death. So right here, Taylor is acknowledging that all of her elegies, all the songs she's written about love, heartbreak, loss, and reflection, eulogize her without her even having realized it over the years. Her work will live on and be listened to even when she's gone, as is the art of all the greats of history. They won't be talking about the details of her life, unless they want to be Taylor Swift experts, in which case I encourage that, but they'll just be talking about the merits of the work. Kinda like how we talk about The Great Gatsby without needing to know all the details of Fitzgerald's hobbies. But her question is that a good thing? Romantic can have to do with love, but it can also have to do with romanticism, an idealized, often unrealistic portrait of life that's more meant to make you feel comfortable than actually make you confront the uglier parts of reality. Does the act of creating itself carry with it this romantic notion that we conjure up in our heads of the elusive artist? And what does that even mean? I especially adore the lines, I bathe in cliffside pools with my calamitous love and insurmountable grief. Not only does it paint this beautiful picture of enjoying solitude in these sweeping vistas, but it also captures the depths of human emotion that we're often afraid to let ourselves explore. Our grief, steeper than Everest. Our love could end the world quicker than Yellowstone. Don't blame me, love made me crazy. If it doesn't, you ain't doing it right. God bless. My personal favorite lines are, a red rose grew up out of ice-frozen ground with no one around to tweet it. I've probably mentioned it before, but Twitter was a terrible crutch for me for a long time. I became obsessed with the platform, using it to seek external validation, and letting it turn me into a more combative, unhappy person. Mainly back when I made more Ruby-centric content in the Volume 6 and 7 eras, and was more involved in the Ruby fandom as a whole. Looking back, I'm disappointed in the person I allowed myself to become. And since I've left that behind, and I've left Twitter, and I've been focusing on myself more and maintaining boundaries and my privacy, I feel like I've been a lot happier. Part of that also involves some private matters I'd rather not discuss, but suffice to say, I've reached a place where I think I'm gonna be okay. Everything I've been through, I have to believe it was meant to teach me about myself and force me to grow. I had to fuck up and stumble, I had to be hurt in order to become the person I am now, and to continue growing into the person I'm meant to be, that I want to be. And that growth shall continue evermore. Hey! Oh, I should be shot. And I think that way of looking at your life and what you've been through, maybe it won't work for you, maybe it's too naive, or maybe it's not acknowledging how the chaotic way of the world operates affects us. But to me, it's more about accepting that so much of what happens in life is out of my hands, and making peace with that. That I'm just gonna keep trying to do my best, and I'm gonna roll with the punches and do what I can. I'm honestly not sure what to say about folklore now that we've gone through all the songs. There's so much ground that we've covered, but even so, it still feels like there's more to go. There are more stories beneath the surface, waiting to be seen by people bringing completely different perspectives to the table. So many other experiences in the world that can be discussed. Mayhaps in a certain sister album. But this album means the world to me. And in a way, I'm happy I didn't listen to it when it first came out. I think I had to go through certain experiences at the end of last year to fully appreciate what folklore had to offer. For it to really hit and make me open my eyes about so many things in my own life. And I suspect that's something most people who love this album can relate to. For Taylor, this is easily her best work to date. She's always been praised for her storytelling, and in a time when we're all feeling more isolated than ever before, she used her skill to weave intricate stories to entertain us and make us feel seen. And she didn't have to. Lover already came out in the summer of 2019, and she could have just waited a long time before needing to release anything else to bring in the dough. But in quarantine, she did what she always does. She made music about how she feels. She just wrote My Tears Ricochet, and then the other stories began to take shape around it. Betty and James' turbulent love, Augustine's passion and sorrow, and the dreams of long-dead poets to tell the vultures in the press to go fuck themselves. Not my carcass! You ain't feeding on my carcass today. No, get back, bird! Folklore is exactly the kind of creative project that all creatives aspire to. Telling stories that are truly timeless, making hearts ache and sing with joy all at once. And all because it was fun. It was just a neat way to express yourself, and now it's taken on a completely new life of its own.
Mirrorball is the first time, and one of the only times, that the time we're living through is actually lyrically addressed. The pandemic and lockdown run through this album like a thread because it's an album that allows you to feel your feelings. And it's a product of isolation. It's a product of all this rumination on what we are as humans. I wrote Mirrorball right after I found out all my shows were cancelled. And it's like I'm still on that tightrope. I'm still trying everything to keep you looking, to get you laughing at me. So I realize, here I am writing all this music, still trying. And I know I have an excuse to sit back and not do something, but I'm not and I can't. And I don't know why that is.
A lot of people may think folklore is too dark for their tastes, or too slow, too sad, too somber, too busy wallowing in the mud for them to enjoy, but I think it's the opposite. It's honest about how sad life can be, yes, how tragedy is ordinary in our world, but so is happiness. If the world is a labyrinth of sadness, anger, and lust, then art is the golden thread that's going to lead us to somewhere better. You just gotta have the patience to follow it, and trust that you'll reach the lake soon. And you won't be alone. Along the way, you'll meet some people, some friends, some enemies, some friends who turn into enemies, and maybe some enemies who become friends. But ultimately, you're gonna be okay.
There have been times in my life where things have fallen apart so methodically, and I couldn't control how things were going wrong, and nothing I did stopped it. I felt like I'd just been pushed out of a plane, scratching at the air on the way down. Like the universe is just doing its thing. It's just dismantling my life, and there's nothing I can do. And this is a weird situation where ever since I started making music with Aaron, I felt like that was the universe forcing things to fall into place perfectly, and there was nothing I could do. It's one of those weird things that makes you think about life a lot. Where this lockdown could have been a time where I absolutely lost my mind, and instead, I think folklore was a real flotation device for both of us.
One of the reasons why folklore resonates with me so much is because in the dismantling of all our systems of life that we've known in the pandemic, you're left with two options. You either cling to it and try to make it work, or just say, well, I guess I'm just gonna try a new path, and kind of get a frontier mentality. And I think that was such a thrilling use of quarantine to say, well, everything's a blur, so I'm just gonna rewrite it. If you want to know more about folklore, I highly recommend Chats and React's video series analyzing folklore track by track, as well as the Long Pond documentary on Disney+. Hey Disney, if you want to give me that sponsorship money, feel free. You're a corporate monster, but I gotta pay bills. There's also a video by professional literature nerd Jack Edwards, in which he discusses all the literary references in both folklore and Evermore. Everlore? Ooh, I like Everlore. Let's go with Everlore. If you want Everlore, you gotta folk more. Oh, that's terrible. And if you want to check out Taylor's other albums or just know more about her, you'll definitely love The Carefully Crafted Narrative of Taylor Swift by Quality Culture, along with A Guide to the Taylor Swift Cinematic Universe by The Take. Oh, I'd also like to recommend an album that's very similar to folklore that my friend Chris introduced to me a long while back. Hi, Chris. Give Me a Minute by Lizzie McAlpine has a similarly chill, rustic vibe to folklore with soft, gorgeous vocals, albeit more focused on losing a love and finding a new one. But if you loved folklore, I think you'll absolutely love Give Me a Minute. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video and would like to see more content like this from me, branching out, maybe talking about some of the music that I enjoy, maybe ranting about my love for Taylor Swift and her storytelling, just a thought, then be sure to not only check out my other videos, but also to subscribe and ring that bell for notifications, because YouTube hates creators. Also, please consider, if you're willing and able, pledging your support of myself and the channel over on Patreon. I'm Unicorn of War, and take me to the lakes where all the poets went to die. Oh, I just now noticed Cinzy left a note in here. Of course they did. God damn it, Cinzy!